Membrane. Membrane keyboards are the most common keyboards on the planet. If you have ever used a keyboard at a school computer lab, a hotel business center, or a cheap office setup, you have used a membrane keyboard. The way it works is simple. Under every key there is a rubber dome. When you press a key, that rubber dome collapses and connects two layers of membrane underneath, which registers the keystroke. When you release the key, the rubber dome springs back up. The whole thing is one connected sheet. There are no individual moving parts for each key. This is why membrane keyboards are so cheap to manufacture. You can find a perfectly functional membrane keyboard for under $10. The downside is the typing feel. Because every key shares the same rubber sheet underneath, the feedback feels mushy. There is no satisfying click, no defined point where you know the key has registered. You just kind of push down and hope for the best. Membrane keyboards are also not very durable. The rubber domes wear out over time, and keys start to feel even worse the longer you use them. But for someone who just needs to type emails and browse the internet, membrane keyboards get the job done, and nobody complains. Scissor switch. Scissor switch keyboards are what you find in almost every laptop ever made and in Apple's Magic Keyboard. They are an upgrade over membrane, but still not mechanical. The name comes from the mechanism underneath each key. Two plastic pieces cross over each other in an X shape, exactly like a pair of scissors. This stabilizes the key so it does not wobble when you press it from the side. Under the scissor mechanism, there is still a rubber dome, but because the key travel is much shorter and the stabilization is much better, the typing feel is significantly improved. Laptop keyboards use scissor switches because the mechanism is extremely thin. You can get a full keyboard into a chassis that is less than 4 millimeters thick. This is why every thin laptop from Apple, Dell, and LG uses this design. The typing feel on a good scissor switch keyboard is clean, precise, and quiet. The keys snap back quickly. Apple's Magic Keyboard is widely considered the best scissor switch keyboard ever made, and many writers prefer it over mechanical keyboards because of how light and responsive it feels. The weakness is key travel. Scissor switches have very short travel, usually around 1 to 2 millimeters. Some people find this tiring over long typing sessions because your fingers never get a deep, satisfying press. Mechanical. Mechanical keyboards are where things get serious. Instead of a rubber dome under each key, mechanical keyboards have individual switches, one for every single key on the board. Each switch is a self-contained unit with a spring inside and a stem that moves up and down independently. This means every key on the board operates completely on its own. If one switch breaks, you can remove it and replace it without throwing away the whole keyboard. The typing feel on a mechanical keyboard is completely different from membrane or scissor. Depending on which switches you choose, you can get a soft and smooth key press, a tactile bump that lets you know exactly when the key registers, or a loud, satisfying click on every single keystroke. Mechanical keyboards also last significantly longer. Most mechanical switches are rated for 50 to 100 million key presses per switch. A membrane keyboard typically lasts around 5 million. If you type 8 hours a day, a good mechanical keyboard will outlast you. The downside is price and noise. A decent entry-level mechanical keyboard starts at around $50 and goes all the way up to several hundred. And if you choose clicky switches, your coworkers will want to throw your keyboard out the window. Gaming keyboards almost universally use mechanical switches today. Brands like Razer, Corsair, Logitech, and SteelSeries all build their entire keyboard lineup around mechanical switches because gamers want speed, accuracy, and feedback that membranes simply cannot provide. Optical. Optical keyboards look identical to mechanical keyboards from the outside. Same individual keys, same solid build. But underneath each key, the way the switch registers is completely different. Instead of two metal contacts touching each other when you press a key, optical switches use a beam of infrared light. The stem of the switch interrupts a beam of light as it travels down, and that interruption is detected and registered as a keystroke. Because there is no physical contact happening, optical switches have virtually zero debounce delay. Debounce is the tiny delay that mechanical keyboards add in software to prevent a single key press from registering twice. Optical switches do not need this because there is no metal contact bounce to worry about. This makes optical keyboards faster to register input than traditional mechanical keyboards. For competitive gaming, this matters. The difference is measured in milliseconds, but at the highest levels of gaming, milliseconds are the difference between winning and losing. This is why Razer moved their entire gaming keyboard lineup to optical switches with their Razer Hyperspeed optical technology. Optical switches also never wear out in the traditional sense because there are no metal contacts to degrade. The lifespan is essentially unlimited for practical purposes. The downside is that optical switches are harder to customize and the ecosystem of available switch options is much smaller than traditional mechanical switches. Topre. Topre switches are the most misunderstood keyboards in the world. Ask someone if Topre is mechanical or membrane, and you will start an argument that lasts 3 hours. The answer is technically both. Topre switches have a spring underneath each key like a mechanical switch, but they also have a rubber dome on top of the spring like a membrane keyboard. The spring and dome work together. When you press the key, the dome collapses onto the spring, and the change in electrical capacitance is detected and registered as a keystroke. There is no physical contact at all. The typing feel of Topre is legendary among enthusiasts. It produces a smooth, deep thok sound on every key press that is unlike anything else. The problem is the price. Topre keyboards start at around $200, and the most premium options like the Happy Hacking Keyboard Professional go up to $500 for a keyboard. But people who buy them never switch back. Topre has one of the most loyal fan bases of any keyboard type in existence. Once you type on a good Topre board, every other keyboard feels wrong. Hall effect. Hall effect keyboards are the newest and most technically advanced keyboards available to consumers right now, and most people have never heard of them. Hall effect switches use magnets. Instead of a physical contact or a light beam, each switch contains a magnet and a sensor underneath that detects the magnetic field. As the key moves down, the magnetic field changes and the sensor reads exactly how far down the key has traveled at every single point in the key press. This enables something called analog input on a keyboard. Every other type of keyboard is binary. The key is either pressed or it is not. Hall effect keyboards can detect exactly how far you have pressed a key at any given moment. This opens up features that no other keyboard can offer. Rapid trigger is the most important one. On a traditional mechanical keyboard, the key has to travel back up to a fixed reset point before it can register a second key press. On a Hall effect keyboard, the reset point is dynamic. The key re-registers the moment it moves back up even slightly. For games that require extremely fast repeated key presses like Valorant and Counter-Strike, this is a massive competitive advantage. Wooden keyboards pioneered this technology and turned the competitive gaming world upside down. Professional esports players started switching to Hall effect keyboards specifically for rapid trigger. Then SteelSeries, Razer, and Corsair all announced their own Hall effect lineups within 2 years. The downside is that Hall effect keyboards are currently expensive, and the software required to configure them properly has a learning curve. But they represent where keyboard technology is heading, and within 5 years they will likely be standard in competitive gaming. Which one is right for you? If you just need to type and price matters, membrane is fine. If you use a laptop or want something thin and quiet, scissor switch is the move. If you want the best typing experience and you are willing to spend money, mechanical is where you start. If you are a competitive gamer who needs the fastest possible input, optical or Hall effect is where you end up. And if you have too much money and want the most satisfying keyboard sound ever recorded by human ears, buy a Topre and never look back.